and welcome back to the Dislife Podcast. I am your host, Mark Valentine, Disney enthusiast, annual pass holder, and DVC member. And as always, we are honored that you're joining our show today and helping us live our best Disney lives. We have an incredibly fun episode today as we welcome James Williams to the show to discuss his incredible Disney podcast, Mouse Ears and Magic, as he shares also his socials, his YouTube, his really fun Instagram. And the two of us in this episode today, we are going to be giving some love to underrated attractions and shows as we discuss the lesser appreciated attractions at all of the Walt Disney parks in Orlando, Florida. If this is your first time joining the show, welcome home. You can find all of our episodes over at www.thisdislifepodcast.com, as well as read our upcoming blog posts from all of our contributors. And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe, download your favorite episodes, and as always, leave us a rating and a 5-star review. We appreciate the feedback and some information on how you are interacting with the show. So really, really good stuff. You may notice that the URL has changed. We've got some really big plans coming up with our contributors, and that is all in preparation of some really amazing changes that are going to be rolled out in Season 2, which will begin effectively in 2021. I've appreciated all of you who hung out with me throughout the course of 2020, but like a lot of Season 1s, it was a shortened season because we were just getting started here. So really cool stuff. Again, check us out at the new URL, www.thisdislifepodcast.com. So it's my honor to welcome to the show James. James and I, a little backstory, we connected on Instagram, and we met through a mutual guest, Lisa, who was on our amazing episode to discuss Disneyland over in California. And Lisa, through the show and through sharing notes and whatnot, Lisa said, have you met James and have you met Sarah? They have an amazing podcast. I'm a huge fan of their podcast. And I went and started to listen to the podcast and then reached out to James on Instagram and said, hey man, loving the pod, really enjoy, just it's very heartfelt. It's really sincere. I love your passion for Disney. And I'm a huge fan of the pod. And then through the process, James and I just started to talk and we started to dialogue. And then he started checking out some of our pods. And then we have become, we'll call it fast fans / friends.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
James, fair. Welcome to Dislife Podcast. It's really amazing. And here's a fun fact. James has lots of guests. He does amazing podcasts, and we're going to talk about his show in particular because I want to plug them. But he said this is the first guest spot I've ever done, and it was so hard for me to believe that no one has ever seen you. Like no one has ever seen you in their studio before. So we're honored. We are the first show that welcomed you in, man. It's an honor to be the first time.
The honor is definitely all mine, man. The what you're doing over there is just absolutely insane. Especially not just your podcast, but inside your Facebook group as well. Those game nights you do, the Mandalorian Mondays, what you're doing is it's really epic. Me and Sarah, we've both just really dove all in. We're obsessed, dude. So the honor is all mine.
Well, listen. The thing is, and thank you. Like I still don't know how to. I never know how to receive.
Oh no, I totally understand that, dude.
When people say that to me, I really I never know how to react because never in a million years did I think when you start a podcast, it's basically, with you, it was you and Sarah and a microphone and a dream to just share your passion, and it was very much the same thing. Never did I ever think in a million years that on the other end of the microphone. At the other end of the technology would be people that would listen and react and love it. So it's a labor of love, but it's so humbling when you have people that spend that weekly time with you. Yeah. And then, you just don't know how to react. And so even if, and I do suspect that even if there were like 2 people that were out there listening, I'd probably still do it. So I appreciate that. But the other thing that I will say is, the vibe that you get from Disney Life is it's a byproduct of everyone that comes on the show. Like it's not me in as much as it's just, I love bringing people on, and it's really their passion. It's their excitement that really makes the show what it is. And it's bringing on a different group of people all the time to share their Disney life. And when I tell people the concept of the podcast, I say, listen, it's pretty simple. You're just going to come on and you're going to vibe out Disney for an hour. And, don't worry about anything else except just share your love and your passion. And that comes through on the air. And it comes through on your show as well, too. And I loved like this last thing that we did on Sunday where it was you and Sarah and Brian talking about Christmas movies on Disney Plus.
Right.
Like so fun, like in that moment to just be sharing in your holiday favorites.
Yeah. And man, we threw some classics out there too, didn't we? I mean, Miracle on 34th Street. Like, when's the last time you thought about that movie?
I love it. But I will say, I did have to leave your live broadcast a few minutes early to prepare for Family Game Night. And you hit me with the gut punch on Family Game Night. Tell me that Sarah did not like Elf.
Dude, she hit me with that live. I mean, like sitting right here next to me, and she goes, I hate Elf. I'm like, whoa, wait, we've been married 8 years, and I'm just now finding this out. She says she's told me before, but
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I would have reacted to that live. I don't know how.
It was brutal, man. It was brutal. And what was funny is, we went to your Family Game Night, right? Got your reaction on it. And then there's some YouTubers that do live chats and all late at night. I was on there. Everybody was talking about it. Yeah. Everybody ended up bringing up, like, how can somebody hate Elf? So she was like, what, am I trending right now or something? Like, what just happened?
She did. She broke the internet.
She did.
She broke the internet with her hot takes. And she darn near broke me at Family Game Night, making me laugh with Meme the Game.
Yeah.
Because she was on point. Her humor was on point, and I greatly appreciated her contributions to Family Game Night as well. So the way I always start, and whenever someone comes on, and I'm sure that you prepared for this because you knew it was coming, because every time I have a guest on for the first time and I'm introducing them to our listeners, I like to start with sharing the genesis, the beginning of your Disney life. What was it in your life that made you a Disney fanatic? Was it a movie? Was it a family trip? Like, when did your Disney life begin?
Well, obviously, you already know. And my answer isn't the most simple in the world. But you can refer back to episode 64 for all the details if you want to for our podcast. But it was, we lost our middle son when he was 6 weeks old. And then when we took Jameson, our oldest son, for his fourth birthday down to Disney, it was, obviously the excitement, as soon as we got to Disney, first thing we did was went to Chef Mickey's and, Jameson getting to see all the characters for the first time and everything. That was incredible. But it was something about when we was sitting there in the grass, right outside of the ice cream corner, or the ice cream parlor, there in Magic Kingdom. And when Happily Ever After started, man, it was just, it hit hard. It was a weight lifted off my shoulders. It's one of those things that's hard to explain without getting overly emotional. But after that, I mean, obviously I was hooked. And then I started, listening to Walt Disney biographies, realized that Walt had been through a lot of things similar. Him and Lily had some miscarriages and all that really got him down. And just seeing how he bounced back from that and everything. And realistically, that's kind of how the podcast was born, was based off of Walt, bouncing back. And we have Disneyland and Disney World from, his struggles and everything. So
I do want to tell you that episode where it was you, Sarah. Mm-hmm. Sarah did not appear. It was you on that episode. It was my introduction to you as a podcaster. It was one, like, incredibly brave. It's really hard to do this. Yeah. People think that, it's really easy to podcast. And for an hour a week, if it's going to be entertaining, you have to put a lot of yourself into the show. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, then people generally will change the channel really quick. So that was the first episode that I tuned in. And I've never reacted to a podcast the way in which I did to that particular episode, because I built in that moment. It was really intimate. Like, it was the first thing that you shared. And like you said, I knew your Disney life prior to this, which is also why I reached out to you then again and said, hey, I had a moment when you broadcasted that. And it was the only time I've ever had that kind of visceral emotional reaction to a pod where I teared up. I had a lot of water in my eyes, and I was feeling that moment with you. Like, it was, amazing. Like that part of your story is just incredible. Like, in the strength that you guys showed through that life event, and the way that you guys have, continued to live. I can't put into words, but it was the moment with which I realized, dude, I was like, these guys have a podcast unlike anything else that I had tuned into. And it was when I didn't just become a fan, but I became devout, and I love James and Sarah. And I love what they're doing over there, because it's real. Because it's real. And you and I have also had side discussions about, and this isn't Disney as much as it's just like Disney related creators. Right. You and I had side discussions about, so many podcasts are just devoted to weekly delivery of the news. Mm-hmm. Very seldom, if ever, do they get to that level where they really get personal. And when I started Disney podcasts, for the most part, 8 out of every 10 I listened to were just everyone doing the weekly Walt Disney World roundup. Right. And so then I started to gravitate towards pods like yours, where I said, you know what? It's not just the content that I'm tuning in for. It's the host. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with the two of you guys as hosts. And that's what I love about the podcast. And, this week when Mark Daniel kind of talked about the YouTube.
Dude, that was epic.
It was epic.
I did not see that coming.
But like Mark, like he hit it right on the head. Like, and this is your moment to feel awkward with the praise. But Mark hit it right on the head when he said, like, we love you guys. You're doing great stuff over there. You're just really great people. And like Mark could not have said it better. That first podcast that you did was the realization for me that I was like, you know what? Like, not only do they have a really entertaining and fun podcast, but like they're salt of the earth people, the kind of people that I do want to tune into to hear what they say, because I love what they're saying. Amazing story, dude. Amazing.
Sometimes, it's a good thing and it's a bad thing at the same time, because we try to be 100% honest. We don't sugarcoat, we just tell it how it is. And sometimes that doesn't go over too well, some people don't like that, but it is what it is. We're not going to lie to somebody to, just try to get them to buy into Disney or whatever. Right. We're just going to, like I said, we're just going to be honest. We're going to be real, and we're going to have fun while we're at it. I mean, what's life if you don't have somebody stirring the pot, right?
Well, there's also a fine line between honesty and complaining. There are pods out there that I appreciate for their being earnest and telling you the way it is. But then there's also pods that you wonder if the hosts actually like Disney, because they spend a good portion of the 45 minutes to an hour.
Oh man, right.
Ripping everything apart. I don't mind when people inject or interject in and say, hey, listen, I'm not a fan of this, or, here are the reasons as to why I don't think that this is a good investment, or, this is not maybe the best experience that you could have. That's a vast difference than, I feel like a lot of hosts come on to just create controversy and complain. And the other moment too, which I actually haven't discussed with you, but I said to a lot of our admins when they saw you in our Facebook group and they asked, who you were. And I said, he's good people. And I shared with them the experience and the story of your Disney life. I said, but here's another reason that I knew instantly that James and Sarah were good. I said, he reached out to me as a sidebar and said, like, hey, what would you do if you had an episode that kind of went off the rails and got a little overly negative? Because right. I feel like I had that happen. And I don't think I want to put this out for my fans, because that's just not who we are at our core. And that was the second moment that I knew that I had found someone that I was a kindred spirit with in terms of like my Disney ethos. That I said, like, this is good people, because that's exactly how we are. It's not to say that we don't want to be honest, but I also don't want to ever come to air and have an overly negative vibe to the podcast, because this is Disney. This is what we love. You can also say, hey, listen, I have some recommendations, but if you don't love something and you spend all the time complaining about it, why even do it in the first place? Yeah. And I used to talk, like, the analogy I would use to that is, and I love them to death, but the New York Yankees, for a very long period there, started to bring me more misery than joy. And it was the year that they were, and I bet you Ethan is probably jumping up and down as he's listening to this, because it's recounting their greatest moment and my worst.
Mm.
When the Yankees lost a series, they were up 3-0, and they lost a series to the Red Sox, and the Red Sox came back 4 games to overturn what was seemingly an insurmountable deficit. And they went on to win the series that year, the Sox, which was added salt to the wound. But I remember at that moment, I was like really upset, and I was like physically ill from that. And my wife looked at me and said, "Why do you watch baseball if you get that negative and emotional about it? Like, turn the television off." And I said, "You know what? Like, you are 100% right. This is a long time ago." And then I switched the way that I consumed sports in that moment. I made the change. Mm-hmm. And like, I kind of feel the same way about Disney, that if you have that negative and that visceral of a negative response to Disney, maybe it's time to change the channel, or at least change the narrative, or dare I say, take a break for a while until you can put out something positive. Not just from the people that consume what you're putting out, but from a mental health standpoint too. Wouldn't that be better? Because like the Yankees were really like making me so mad that like I was screaming at the television, and she's like, "Listen, this is not positive." And I'm like, "You were right. I'm turning off the TV." And if I ever feel in that moment, I still watch them, and I'm still very much a fan. But if I ever feel those emotions creeping up, you know what I do?
Just turn it off. Yeah.
Click. Mm-hmm. And then I find out the next morning, it's like they lost, and I'm not emotionally attached to it. I'm like, well, I kind of knew they were, and I'm not upset. Like this year when they got bounced from the playoffs, I wasn't watching.
Yeah.
Wasn't watching.
Yeah. And we was talking pre-show about, teaching and coaching and everything. And that's how I ended up. I was the same way with sports. My wife used to get so mad at me. I had, probably 10 to 15 of the 3-inch 3-ring binders filled with notes from when I was watching football games and everything, Yeah, I just ended up having to turn it off, just like you, And even, I'm an Alabama fan, right? I'm from Alabama. And, there's not much we can get mad about when it comes to college football. And I'd still find myself getting frustrated watching games. I'm like, okay, look, I got to back off a little bit, so I don't catch every game. I don't watch all of every game anymore. You just got to back off. And sometimes you got to do that with Disney too. It can get a little overwhelming at times, especially when you're as passionate about it as we are. And you start seeing some things happening and everything. It's like, oh man, you just turned off for a couple of days.
Yeah, I'll never say that I don't have empathy for the people that feel that way. I do, and I won't even say that it's unjustified. It is, but what I will always caution people is just always be careful about regurgitating that type of negativity and attitude, because it will permeate you. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that I'm not a stoic. I'm not unemotional. And in fact, I'm a very emotional guy. Mm. But when it comes to the other stuff in the world, I just filter. I try to filter it out so that I don't allow it to change my affect. So many people are critical of this podcast, if only to say, like, Mark, you do realize there's a lot of stuff in the world besides Disney. Like, you're so tone deaf. And I go, listen, I watch news. I consume that stuff. I just don't allow it to. I don't allow it to take over my life.
Yeah.
And my escapism is a byproduct directly of those things. The Dislife Podcast was born directly from that, that the human world is a mess.
Yeah.
So I needed to leave it for a little while and come into the bubble. Yeah. And for us, it's a virtual bubble, but a bubble nonetheless. If I can't be in Orlando, Florida, I retreat to the Enchanted Tiki Room studio for an hour a week. And I allow my conversation and my connectedness with another Disney fan to be the focus of that week. And it does help me navigate the other stuff in life.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I tell people, like, listen, if you can't understand that, I'm sorry that you can't appreciate what this pod is meant to do. And I'm sorry that you can't afford me that mental health reparation. Because people are like, dude, you're nuts. And I'm like, okay. Okay. And I said, listen, thank you. I mean, like, it's fine. But we joke, and I said, look, I wear my Disney fandom as a badge of honor anymore. I used to feel a little bit more ashamed, And the other episode that you had was Self-Respecting Men Who Love Disney, which resonated with me because it was something I needed to hear in that moment. But a lot of people are like, you're a 41-year-old man who loves Walt Disney World. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, yes, for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, I love it as a Disney dad. I love the purity of Disney and the way that it's consumed by my child. Mm-hmm. When you become a Disney dad, you're, again, the start of your Disney story. That was your genesis as well.
Exactly.
We took our daughter when she was 3, and it was the beginning of really a rekindling of a passion for Disney. But also, I love the purity and the message of what Walt Disney World created. He created an oasis. Mm-hmm. He created escapism from the world, and it resonated with me right now. In 2020, it resonated more than ever.
And something that I think a lot of people, either they forget or they just don't know, the whole reason Disneyland was started was when Walt had every Sunday afternoon, he'd take his girls to the park. They had daddy-daughter time. And usually it ended up with him sitting on a park bench, watching them play on the merry-go-round and go down the slides and everything. And that's when he had the idea of Disneyland, to make a place where parents and kids can go together and everybody have the same amount of fun, Yeah. And there we go. You got Disneyland, and then that just exploded to Disney World, and now it's all over the world, So that's something that a lot of men, especially, for some reason, a lot of men just don't understand it. They're like, man, Disney's for girls, it's for kids. I mean, dude, you're missing out, but okay,
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree wholeheartedly. I say this. I said this to Ethan on the Wolf of Walt Disney and the Wookiee podcast. I always also know a good podcast when I'm nodding or talking back to the podcast. So I found myself in that episode talking back to the podcast and voicing my agreement with what you were saying. Listen, I could. This is like gotten really cool. Like we've gotten into areas that
we didn't expect. Yeah,
we didn't expect it. That's the other great thing about a podcast. But the reason I had you on was I wanted to get your take, and I always love to have themes with these podcast episodes. And I wanted to give love and attention to rides, shows, attractions that don't really get their due. They are the perennial 5-minuters or 15-minute wait times, but the 15-minute is more of a placeholder because you can walk right on. So this episode, I wanted to do an episode devoted entirely to the underrated, the untraveled, the road less traveled Disney style. Mm-hmm. I think there is an unfair assumption that because these rides do not garner the crowds, that they're throwaways, they're experiences that don't add any value to the Disney trip.
Right.
So I wanted to give them their day and their due. And as our last episode of season 1, I thought it was a perfect way to end 2020, to put a cherry on top of what has been an amazing podcast season for us. We're not going away. There's no break. We're just going to start broadcasting season 2 in 2021, by the way. So please don't think, oh, well, that's it. I'll see you in a few weeks. We're not going anywhere. We're coming to you next week, but we're going to start a new season with a bunch of different surprises. But I thought this was the perfect way to end 2020. You're very much continuing what I think 2020 has been for us as a podcast, which is meeting new friends, meeting new people, discovering things that we hadn't discovered. And the thing about 2020 that I will remember when I look back on this year of my life are all of these people connected by thousands of miles and yet brought so close because of technology. So I thought, what better way to celebrate the end of 2020 than to talk about the road less traveled / attractions.
Love it.
And to kind of focus on the things that we forget about, but if we paid them a little bit more attention, they would add so much more flavor to the trip. So it was kind of like I built the bridge between those two ideas, and I said, what perfect way then to do that? So here's how, let's do it this way, and I'll lay out the kind of the ground rules. You already have formulated your list, but if you pick something, I can't pick it.
Right.
So this is kind of a new rule because usually, like when I have Dwayne on and Dwayne will do his list, or we had Ethan on, I will allow myself, and it's a cop-out, to do an agreement of that, So if you pick it, I can't pick it. I have to go to something else. And we're going to do like a top 3 for each of us. So you are the guest. I will give you home field advantage, so to speak. You get to go first, and take something off the board. So what is an underrated attraction / show that you just say, listen, man, no one goes to it, but it's a must do?
All right, so I want to start with one of probably the most underrated rides in all of property, especially Magic Kingdom. I'm going with the Astro Orbiter. The Astro Orbiter is the most underrated ride. It honestly, people, I hear it on podcasts, hear people talking about it, see them talking in Facebook groups and everything, that it just needs to be taken away. It's a waste of money. Nobody does it. Let me tell you when to do it. You do it at sunset. You get up there around sunset and you see this, you've got that bird's eye view. You're seeing the sunset, over the castle, Main Street, USA. It's an unforgettable scene. The only thing that I regret when we went this past December was that I didn't have a better camera to get better pictures, because I've never seen any pictures from up there at that time. It was just amazing. And not to mention, it's, pretty fun watching the kids kind of freak out a little bit because you're so high up, but at the same time, they're wanting to go higher. So explain that one. But yeah, I'm going with that one, dude. Astro Orbiter.
Awesome. Hot take for me. It was not on my list. I will admit, because the queue is somewhat hard to get to, I have perennially skipped it. But I think you just sold me on it.
Yeah. Sunset, man. Sunset.
And that's awesome. All right, so mine, and it's kind of it's a cult favorite. It's a cult favorite, but the wait times are usually pretty low. My number one has to be over at Epcot is Living with the Land. Everyone runs over to Soarin'. Everyone checks out and flocks to Soarin'. My wife, I have to give credit to this one because my wife is really the fan of this one, that she made me a fan of it. But I love it. It is a very relaxing and calm boat ride. I love the greenhouse. It's just very fascinating, but it's a really informative ride. And it kind of harkens back to what Epcot was originally intended to be, which was edutainment, that each one of the pavilions had a theme, that it was intended to educate and also entertain at the same time. So half of it is a dark ride, half of it is the greenhouse tour, and all of it is magical. And then you could do the Beyond the Seeds tour, where you can get into the greenhouse and get even more of it, and it makes it even that much more interesting. But I also like the commitment that they made to it, where they just updated recently the video segments and the audio at the tail end of Living with the Land, so that it really got a more modern makeover, and that now they have even more modern agricultural techniques kind of broadcasted into that. So huge fan, and it's always a can't miss for us. It's become a lot more popular in the last few years because that cult following has kind of gotten out there. But before that, it was a 15-minute wait all the time. It was a walk-on.
Well, and, you can't forget about the overlays too, right? I mean, the Christmas overlay, they do a little bit for Halloween, with the pumpkins and everything. But the lights they do at Christmas is really cool. Yeah.
No, really cool. So that's my number one. Go ahead. It's off the board.
All right. I am going, because I had that one, right?
That's why I went first with that.
Man. So I'm going to go ahead and go with a show, and I'm staying in Magic Kingdom. All right. And I avoided it as my first one because I thought you might take it, considering the sign is right behind your head. I'm going with the Enchanted Tiki Room. I mean, come on. How'd you miss that one?
You took it off the board. I had it. You took it off the board. Okay, fair.
So, look, I mean, it's a really cool little show, right? But you get your Dole Whip. And even right now, even with the COVID restrictions and everything where you have to wear the mask and all, you're still socially distanced when you're in the show, and they still allow you to take the Dole Whip in and you can eat it in there. Perfect way to cool off. You get things going on all around you. It's an incredible show. And then again, the story behind it, how that came to be with Walt seeing this little animatronic bird in a bird cage through a window in New Orleans. That's what inspired the entire show. The fact that they actually had to get a piece from NASA to make the birds, happen, because they had to have a small enough chip and everything. Everything behind it is just absolutely mind blowing how they made it work.
Good pick. You took it off the board for me. It was this. So I was going back and forth. I'm like, which one do I drop first to take off the board? And I was like, you know what? I have to do Living with the Land because I kind of feel like that's going to be there for either one of us.
Right.
So I hedged my bet, and I'm glad I got my pick, but I lost. All right, so number 2, I'm gonna stay in the Magic Kingdom, and I'm gonna go with the show that I feel like it's not appreciated enough. Is Mickey's PhilharMagic. Gets a lot of crowds in the summer for a lot of people who are first timers, but it does not get a lot of repeat love.
Mm-hmm.
I understand a lot of people are probably hearing that, and I just felt the collective groan on the other end that people were like, oh. It's aged. Yeah, it's aged. The 3D technology is not as impressive as it was when the concept was out. 3D tech, by and large, is not the draw that it used to be, and I understand that. But the story of it is, it's really just it's a great cartoon. It's a great cartoon, and I have a soft spot for Donald Duck. Growing up, everyone loves Mickey. Your default is to love Mickey,
right?
But I love me some Donald Duck. He's my spirit animal. That I get very passionate. So Donald he's a good guy. He's a really good guy, but he sometimes allows his emotions to take over, and he gets a little hot under the collar. Growing up, I associated with Donald Duck. He was my spirit animal.
Nice.
And I also felt so bad for the dude that he was constantly vying for attention. It was like Mickey got all the love and attention. I was the dude yelling the Mickey Mouse. I was the guy repping Donald. Going,
yeah.
That was me. So I love the fact that Donald, in essence, gets his own ride. It's called Mickey's PhilharMagic, but it really is Donald's. I love the tech. I would like to see it updated, like they've done with a lot of the 3D experiences, like they did with Impressions and they did with Reflections of China. I feel like we got to get a little new tech in there. I feel like they can do a little bit with it, but I feel like most people avoid it on the regular. And if I had to do no, I can't do a 1A. I'm sorry, man. I can't do it. Mark can't do it. You cannot pick a 1A yet. James hasn't picked his third. But I feel like there are other shows in the Magic Kingdom that kind of get the runaround from the regulars. And I feel like this is one that even if you've gone 20 times, checking out the show, you're always going to leave with a smile on your face when Donald's butt is hanging out of the back of the theater at the end of it.
Yeah.
You're always going to laugh. You're always going to smile. And it brings a smile to my face every time. So that's my second.
All right. So, man, this is a tough one. I'm just going to go ahead. Let's go over to Toy Story Land. I'm going to go Alien Swirling Saucers.
Good call.
It's a very predictable ride. Like you can see the tracks. You know what's going to happen. The queue, it has a really nice queue. The kids, for some reason, the kids love being able to push those massive buttons and everything, in the queue. But being slung back and forth, and even if you're riding it solo, right? If you just watch the families around you, the sheer look of terror yet excitement on the kid's face, they get slung over into their dad and they're like scared to death, and then they start cackling, and then they're slung over into the other wall. It's just a lot of fun, and it never has a line, so you rope drop, go over to Slinky Dog Dash, you rope drop it, and then everything else is built up by then. You're good to get on Alien Swirling Saucers and have a walk on.
It's a lot of fun. My daughter loves it. It depends on what time of the year you go. If you go in the middle of tourist season, again, if it's people's first trips there, the line can creep up to 30 or 40 minutes. But for an attraction, that's really not that long. 40 minutes is not long at all. And otherwise, it is a walk on. Good call. I had it on my list. It's on here that I strategically was going to go to that if I needed to go to. I don't hate it. All right, so the third one, I have to take this. I actually did not expect. I thought you would pull this one immediately, and it's probably my number one. But I didn't want to go there because I wanted to leave it to you, the guest, to have the honor of pulling it. But you leave me no choice. You leave me no choice. I have to, because this is it. This is number 3 for me now. Grand Fiesta Tour, for a lot of the same reasons that I chose Mickey's PhilharMagic, my boy Donald Duck. I had to take it. I love it so much. It is always a walk-on. Always a walk-on. I've gotten into discussions with people on the potential overlay for a Coco, that it's right for a Coco takeover. I have very mixed emotions about that. I always trust Disney, and I know that a Coco ride with the new projections, the 3D projections like they did with Mickey's Runaway Railway, would be just jaw-dropping amazing to see the Land of the Dead in that huge space with the projections all around you in 360-degree view, with animatronics in the foreground, would be the most amazing thing that I think Disney could ever do to that space. And I would be on board, but I think I would always lament, like I did with the Great Movie Ride, I would always lament the ride that came before it that I loved. I love the Great Movie Ride, but I don't cry for it anymore because the Runaway Railway is so good.
Oh, isn't it though?
I love the Grand Fiesta Tour. I leave that ride singing for at least 45 minutes to an hour after that. I'll walk around and I'll just like, my daughter will be like, stop now. Cause I'll just be like, yes, we have the stars to guide us, guitars here beside us to play as we go. And my daughter will be like, okay, Dad, we've had it with that.
Well, look, you can tell her next time, look, it could be worse. At least you can sing, right?
Yeah.
You know, we get off Carousel of Progress or Pirates, I'm singing for the next hour. Yeah. And I can't sing worth the cuss, you know, so it could be worse.
She'll tell me, she'd be like, Panchito, chill. but that's probably my number one. More people need to appreciate it. But if more people do, then I feel like it almost loses that gem quality. You always know you can get on it. I love the ambiance of the Mexican pavilion. I love walking into the pyramid, the little shop. You have the restaurant with people that are quietly dining there. It's just got a cool ambiance. And then the ride on the back end of it is.
So we actually did a rides bracket, right? So we did it for each park and all. And Three Caballeros actually made it to the final four for the Epcot bracket. But the funny thing was, you know, it's mostly adults voting and everything, right, in the live chat. It seems that the cold beverages that you can get over there in Mexico are really the big hit for that ride. So
they are. People grab them a margarita and they just and they ride it. The truth be told is the hardest part is only picking three. There are so many. Like this is the other thing as we delve back into the podcast world. I always tell people, Disney content, you can always revisit this. So I love the fact that I shortened it. I said, let's do three because I feel like there can always be a part B to this.
Oh, I have so many more.
I have so many more that I wrote down. And like, that's the great part. Do me a favor. For those of you that are listening, I'm going to try to create a concurrent socials. Let us know, like, what's your favorite underrated ride? What's your go-to that you say, hey, listen, I love the fact that it's always a 5 to 10 minute or a walk-on. There's a lot that we left off of this list. Purposefully, we left off this list. But some of that might also be strategic because I don't want it to get overly crowded. But good stuff. Like, that's the thing that I love about Disney, which whenever people ask me why Disney is our go-to destination, I say because every single trip is different. There's always something to do. You can change up the trip any single time. You can say, this time around, we're going to focus on food. We're going to focus on extras. We're going to focus on water parks. We're going to focus on pools. We're going to focus on resorts. We're going to do shopping. You can say, I'm going to make this a blank themed trip and then just make it happen. No two Disney trips are ever the same, ever.
Right.
And that's why I tell people that's what I love about it. You know, and I have people who are like, dude, I don't like to go. And I'm like, listen, then you would love Disney. Go to Beach Club and spend the time of your life at that pool. And you will thank me later. Thank me later. But listen, I had a really, really amazing time with you. I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, man.
I say to everybody, like, I love having guests back again and again. And I know your passion and your love of Disney. So it's never like goodbye. We'll see you.
See you next time.
Yeah, we'll see you next time.
Yeah, that's what I always say. See you next time. My bad.
And so again, a quick plug for James is, you know, check out their podcast. It's Mouse Ears and Magic Podcast, and you can find them at www.mouseearsandmagicpod.com. They have an amazing Instagram. They have an incredible Facebook page as well. James is a part of our Facebook community at Dislife Podcast. He and Sarah they're passionate. They're funny. They're informative. It's everything that I love about a podcast. We're friends, and I'm fans, and I can never say enough good about the people that I've met and have enriched 2020. This being the official end of the 2020 season at Dislife Podcast. James, thank you for being one of so many friends that we've made in 2020. It's a bright spot of 2020. I appreciate you, sir. I appreciate your passion. I love your Disney life. It touched me at the very core of my heart. And I loved sharing that intimate moment with you on your podcast, and as did all of your fans. And I just want to thank you again for what you do and for sharing your Disney life with everybody week in and week out on your podcast. Amazing. Thank you.
And I think, we got to give a huge thanks. I know you mentioned her earlier, but Lisa, without her, we probably would, who knows when we would have met. I'm down here in the Southeast. It took a lady out in California to introduce me to somebody up in the Northeast. The Disney world is just insane how it works.
It is.
And yeah, it's just an incredible community. And, I'm so happy that we found you. And one thing that I've always had an issue with on podcasts, when I first started listening was, what is this person really like? So, and I put this in your Facebook group. I'm going to go ahead and hit you with it here too. So any listeners that might have any questions on what kind of person is Mark really like, he is probably the most genuine guy you're going to meet. We've only been chatting for week and a half, 2 weeks. It hadn't been that long. We've just kind of hit it off. And for somebody to be so genuine to where, he brought up, the show earlier where, kind of had some questions that kind of went a little negative. And if it would have just been me, Sarah, and Brian, it wouldn't have been an issue. I would have trashed it, but we had a guest, right? And that's what made it kind of an awkward situation for me. And I knew immediately I can go to Mark. He's going to give me the best advice. He's going to be straight up with me. Dude has a heart of gold. So you have chose the right podcast to call home.
I can't. Thank you. That's all I'm going to say because
awkwardness.
Listen. I
crickets.
Yeah, I do get emotional too. I'm grateful for that. No one's perfect, and myself included. I try my hardest. And I think 2020 was a huge paradigm shift for me, in that realization of we can always give into our say our inner demons, or it's a constant struggle between allowing all of those other things to change your mood and really to dictate the narrative of your day to day or just your life. And with 2020, with everything that had been going on, I kind of reflected upon everything that I was doing in life, as did many of us. And I kind of said, hey, listen, you know what? Just be a force for good in the world. And that's it. That's it. And no quid pro quos, no expecting anything back, no expecting any cross promotions, no expecting any listenership, no expecting anything. Just try to do the right thing by people and then just leave it at that. And there have been other people that I've lent those things to, and that they took it and they ran with it. And I don't say that in a negative way. I'm glad. I hope that what I told them or advice that I gave or just something that I offered them in that moment enriched their lives in some way, and that's it. And if a little podcast or a kind word or a gesture, an email or a message can make that person's day, make that person's week, that's kind of what I've been all about. And I like to think that we in the Disney community are doing that for each other on the daily. Mm-hmm. And I just want to be one of many. And the fact that I've met so many great people as a part of that process is, it makes you feel good at the end of the day. It helps you kind of navigate all the other stuff that's going on.
Right.
In the world.
And I got to say, a lot of, the smaller podcasts, or not smaller, but younger podcasts will say, a lot of us started out, like you said, no goal in mind. I don't care who's listening. It was more of a mental and emotional health for us. Mm-hmm. We need that escape. And when you find the podcast like that, I think you're going to find somewhere that you really can call home, because that your host is truly in it just, for their health and your health. They want to remember that magic. They want to talk about that magic, and they want you to experience that with them. So, yeah.
Well, listen, thank you again for joining us. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I love your story, and I love the way, to continue what you just said. I love you guys as hosts is first and foremost what I love about the show. And then the fact that it's talking about something that I'm passionate about just is the cherry on top. But thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all of the fans that have joined us in 2020. It has been an outstanding season 1. I'm really excited for what's coming next year. We have an amazing slate of guests. All of our guests that have been joining us, many of our crew and our admins, we have some really great things in store. So hang on tight, come back, enjoy your Disney life with us, in 2021, because it's only going to get better and bigger and, more magical. Magical would be the term I would use. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope that you really enjoyed the podcast this season. I hope that you have a wonderful holiday. Thank you so much for all of the gifts that you've given to our family, the emotional enrichment that you've offered us throughout the course of the last few weeks. We really appreciate it. We love you all. And as always, I hope that 2020 has been a year where you've been able to find those silver linings. And I wish you a happy rest of 2020. I hope that 2020 and 2021 is filled with faith, trust, and pixie dust. We'll see you real soon.